The first pass is the first mixed layer of paint. So by that I mean paint that we've actually mixed together, not just the underpainting. We'll start by mixing up a few piles of paint, basically a few pre-mixed values, so you can paint uninterrupted when it's time. Take a look at an area that you would like to paint, and take into consideration the amount of time you have in this session. If you have 45 minutes or an hour, maybe just mix a couple values that seem appropriate for that area. We're not going from very light to very dark necessarily. We're just working with the values that you're going to need for whatever area you choose to paint today. If you have time to paint the entire first pass or want to just pre-mix all of your values and put them in the freezer, then go for it. Mix up several values. So once you have about 4 or 5 values mixed that are appropriate for the area you're choosing to start with, we're going to start the first pass. So generally speaking, use the biggest brush you can for an area. I'm going to be starting with the background here, and I'm going to use this brush, which is a size 10 flat. And again, sizes will vary from brand to brand, so don't think that you have to use a size 10 or anything, but just use one that feels like you'll cover enough ground and it'll go quicker. Also that the brush size will be appropriate to the area. The background is relatively big here, so I don't really need a small brush to do tiny little brush strokes. Whereas if I'm working in the goblet or in the plum, I want a smaller brush in order to get some of the subtlety there. So you don't need to dip the brush into oil or mineral spirits at first. We're just going to grab some paint. And I'm using about that much paint for now. Then I'm holding the brush like this. I'm going to look at the area that I want to apply the paint in and apply the paint. And then as much as possible, leave it alone. So our goal in the first pass here is to be careful with the values and paint with attention, but not to overwork and not to get too stuck with the details. There'll be a second pass and an opportunity to add more detail and more refinement later. Now do try to go over the edges of your drawing just a little bit. I know it can feel a bit scary, but it will make the second pass that much easier because, sorry, not the second pass, it'll make painting the objects that much easier because when you go to paint the stem here, for example, it will overlap the background rather than having a little gap of underpainting in between the background and the stem. So I'm starting to get quite light through this lower part of the cloth and just using a bit more paint through there as well. That will help to catch the light actually on the canvas and make the applied paint look a bit lighter, but it also shows a sense of volume and texture, which then tends to come forward really nicely. So for the glass here, I'm not trying to think of it as metal or as a glass. I'm really just trying to look for the kind of abstract patterns of light and dark. So if you're painting something reflective or transparent, try not to get caught up in creating what you think the texture should look like, but really just try to follow along with what it actually looks like. If you paint the values as you see them, without trying to make it look like glass or metal or whatever it is, whatever the object is that you're working on, then inevitably it will look the way it's supposed to. Not because you've actively tried to make it look like that, but because you've been following along with the values as they're presented to you. I'm gradually moving towards the light area of the plum. Again, following that sort of background to foreground and dark to light pattern that we've been aware of this whole time. Okay, so that's the first pass completed. Now again, the level of finish might be different from person to person, so if you have more detail or less detail than this, that's totally fine. It really is just about doing as much as you can in the first pass while maintaining that progress. Not stagnating or getting really stuck in any one area. If there are any areas in your first pass where you know you want to soften an edge, do it now while the paint is wet. Otherwise, just leave it alone, and we'll come back to this when it's dry in the second pass. So that might take a couple days depending on how much paint you've used, what kind of environment it's in, what brand of paint. But wait till it's mostly dry until we come back. Don't forget to wash your brushes using soap and water and let them dry properly. And we'll see you in the second pass. Visit NicoleSleethAtelier.com to sign up for the full course or become a member to access all content.